Pickswise Nation, good morning. Welcome on into Let's Bet It, brought to you by Superbook Sports. I am your host today. A little bit of a different role. Jared Smith hanging out with you on a Monday morning. Howard Bender in the saddle today. The fantasy alarm guru, HB. What's up, pal?
What's going on? I heard on Monday morning you guys wanted to pretty it up a little bit, so you put Laura Jabara on the bench, and you threw me into the mix here. So happy to be here and to bring my handsome mug to everybody out there.
We're classing up the joint on a Monday. Very classy performance this morning from England. Glad I woke up to a money line, a juicy money line play, but a money line play nonetheless. It was a misprice on England here at minus 325. They are going to cruise past Iran, and we will have plenty more World Cup picks for you coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Mark Langdon, head of sports content at the Racing Post, our sister website across the pond there, does a fantastic job with all of the footy, and we'll get plenty of World Cup takes. And of course, Prop Holiday will be on momentarily as well at the bottom of the hour to talk a little Monday Night Football. Cards and Niners tonight down south in Mexico City. We'll also have a little overreaction for you. We do like to overreact or maybe underreact in certain situations here to what we saw in the NFL yesterday. And, of course, plays of the day coming up later in the show. But first, don't forget, subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments what your picks are or some questions. We'll try to get them sprinkled in throughout the show. And, of course, make sure to download the Pickswise app, available on Apple Store or Google Play. And, of course, this is Let's Bet It, brought to you by Superbook Sports. Let's begin, Howard, with Overreaction Monday. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised to see your biggest winner here, because this was a team that was certainly on the ropes last night. But Patrick Mahomes, left, right, center, maybe an MVP favorite. Now the Chiefs get home. They don't cover, but they do get home late night against the Chargers. Tell me about your biggest winner from what you saw in the NFL yesterday.
Well, I did have I had the Chargers plus the 5.5, so I was very happy about that. But yeah, I mean, how are the Chiefs not walking away as the big winners right now, given the framework that we're seeing here in the AFC West? Because we thought that this division was just going to be a rough and tumble division. We thought that we were going to see a huge, huge battle. We were even talking about the possibility of 3, maybe even 4 teams coming out of this division for the playoffs. I mean, that was the way. It was the wild, wild west. And now what you've got here, I mean, Denver's atrocious. The Raiders winning yesterday, still atrocious. Beating the Chargers here on the road was a big move for the Chiefs, whether you bet the spread or you didn't bet the spread. Coming away from this division now as the division leader, I mean, I think that's a big deal. It's kind of a big statement. And I think that, you know, what we're looking at here as far as the Chiefs go moving forward is, you know, this is an 8-2 team that is likely to roll through the majority of the rest of their schedule. They've got the Rams and the Bengals up next. The Bengals might be the toughest out of that battle. Then it's the Broncos, the Texans, the Seahawks, the Broncos, and the Raiders again. Like, legit, the Chiefs may never lose another game this season. They will end up as the number 1 seed in the playoffs. And I think that beating the Chargers last night was a huge statement. Oh, and by the way, there are 3 certainties in life, right? Death, taxes, and Mahomes to Kelsey.
You know what's funny about that too is I was, a couple of the podcasts, our pals Todd Furman and Payne Bet the Board brought up this nugget this week, and I didn't know it because it's not something that I track. But Travis Kelce against the Chargers had never scored a touchdown when Derwin James was on the field. He was kind of like the kryptonite to Travis Kelce, but clearly kryptonite took a night off because Travis was just, and maybe it was out of necessity, Howard, because of all the other injuries we saw with Kansas City's wide receiver group. And of course, Kadarius Toney goes down midway through the game. I thought Sky Moore really stepped up and kind of graduated, right? You know, he was kind of in the freshman class, fumbling punts earlier in the year, kind of cast aside, did what he needed to do last night, made a few plays on that final drive to put Kansas City in position to score. And you're right, the schedule makes it damn near impossible for them not to run the table. And I think the other thing that I'm a little bit colder on, I was hotter on it last week, was the Tua MVP bandwagon. I think Patrick Mahomes kind of, I don't want to say locked it up, but it will take an injury or some kind of, asteroid to hit the earth for him not to win the MVP because of that schedule and because of what he did last night in primetime in a divisional game. Would you consider a Mahomes MVP bet? Odds on right now, but like you said, odds are Chiefs are going to run the table.
Odds are Chiefs are going to run the table. If I can get Pat Mahomes as an MVP for plus money at this point right now, given the way Lamar Jackson has kind of fallen off a little bit. And again, I agree with you. I think the Tua for MVP is a bit of an overreaction as well, because in all honesty, you want to talk about like a system quarterback. I think this is more Mike McDaniel being coach of the year than it is Tua to be the MVP. For Pat Mahomes, here's the interesting thing is that we've seen this now over the course of the season where we knew it was Mahomes to Kelce and trying to figure out the pecking order of targets from this team as we move forward in the season without Tyreek Hill. And we finally got a little bit of clarity where it was Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman. Now with both of these guys out, again, we're kind of throwing our hands up in the air and we're wondering what's going on. And so, to see him connect with Sky Moore a little bit better, I think that's an important factor here. And obviously, taking a look at some of the other receivers, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like these guys are not game-breaking wide receivers. These guys are good wide receivers, but these aren't playmakers like we're used to seeing here. So for the Chiefs to be at 8-2 right now, this is definitely a Mahomes MVP caliber season that we're all witnessing.
It really is, because I tweeted this out. It was actually, I think I don't know if it was during the first Chargers game or it was early in the year when Mahomes hitting like 10 different receivers in a game. And I said he would hit the hot dog guy if he was open. Like, it doesn't matter who you put on. As long as they can catch the ball and they can get open, Mahomes will find them. And I think that's what makes this season very unique, where Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I mean, it's just weapon after weapon after weapon, and they've all been, knock on wood, relatively healthy for Miami, whereas that hasn't been the case for Patrick Mahomes. And I think you give a little bit of the credit, I think, to Bieniemy and Andy Reid. They just keep revolutionizing the systems and the schemes and some of the wrinkles that they put into this offense with new casts of characters around them. It's really been a magnificent season for this Chiefs team, and I expect, as we think, to be the number one seed as they head into the AFC playoffs. I'll give you my biggest winner, and it might be one that you forgot about because it happened on Thursday. But listen, the Tennessee Titans, they just keep showing up and they keep winning football games, and Mike Vrabel continues to do it as an underdog. And that, to me, and he's going to have to do it again this week because the line flipped from earlier this summer, and the Titans are an underdog again this week against the Bengals. We'll see how that game plays out. But this Tennessee team, I don't think they're good enough to win the Super Bowl, but I think they're good enough to win a game in the playoffs and to make someone's life very miserable. Maybe it's Mahomes, maybe it's Lamar Jackson, someone like that, because of just the style of defense they play. Not a lot of, high-end talent, but they play assignment football. They're tough as nails, and they're a top 10 schedule-adjusted efficiency defense with an offense that is very limited. Your thoughts on the Titans winning Green Bay on Thursday?
Listen, I kind of think that the Packers are just gassed and they're done, and Aaron Rodgers is finished, and I'm fine with that. And let's all move on from there. The Titans, this is a weird team. And I saw that the over under for their win total coming into the year was 9.5. I was like, ooh, 9.5. And I
They
hit
might
the
get there.
under. I hammered the under. Yeah, coming up, they've got the Bengals. Then the Eagles is a tough one. But then they got the Jags, the Chargers, the Texans, the Cowboys, and the Jaguars again. So there's 3 games right there.
Yeah.
2 against the Jags, 1 against the Texans, where you kind of have to look at it and say that this could be a 10-win team by the end of the season, which obviously hurts me at a monetary level. But from a standpoint, I think I agree with you. If you can't stop Derrick Henry, and we've seen teams do it, but if you can't stop Derrick Henry, then you've got some serious problems. I don't love Tannehill. I don't love the weapons. I like Treylon Burks. Robert Woods, I don't know where he's gone. Austin Hooper is like the leading target guy over the last 2 weeks. I don't think that's something that's going to play either. I agree with you. I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. Could they win a playoff game if a team doesn't have the cover corners to sell out and stuff the run completely the way Denver did a couple of weeks ago? Well, then there's definitely an issue here, and they could end up winning that first playoff game and really throwing people for a loop.
Well, that's the fascinating thing is I think that's where they prefer to be in your mind. The Titans. They're not very good. And this like that's where Vrabel excels. He's 22-12 against the spread as an underdog in his career. 20 of those 22 outright wins as an underdog. So that is the role that they prefer to be in. Afterthought, you don't care, and then they all of a sudden sneak up on you as a 3-point dog. And the defense has been fantastic. I think Mike Vrabel, this might be his best coaching job to date because of all the things you mentioned with the weapons being limited and with Ryan Tannehill's injury. So I think the Titans I agree with you that the Packers are not this dominant team, and going to Lambeau is not what it used to be and getting a win. But it continues to impress me how Tennessee defies the odds, and Mike Vrabel's putting together one heck of a coaching job. All right, biggest loser. We're kind of both on the same page here in our New York states of mind, but I will let you go first with your biggest loser of the weekend.
I don't wanna. I was.
You have to, Howard. Contractually obligated. You signed the deal. Now give me your biggest loser.
It's me. I'm the biggest loser. Why? Because I was in 4 survivor pools. 3 of these pools, one was circa. 3 of them were I had 4 picks in each one. And what happened? In the last one that I had remaining, I didn't have any decent teams left. And it came down to the Giants against Detroit, the Jets against the Patriots, or the Saints hosting the Rams. And I almost went with the Saints because, I almost went with the Saints, but I didn't because half their offensive line was hurt, the problems they're having on offense with turning over the ball, their secondary is decimated. So I went to the Giants. And let me tell you something, that is the biggest loser of this week because they got housed by Detroit. They got embarrassed. They did not look good at all. I mean, Daniel Jones, I don't care if you throw for 355. If you can't get the job done against a tomato can defense like the Detroit Lions, I'm sorry. Nobody's going to respect you. I don't know what happened to Saquon Barkley. I don't know what happened to Darius Slayton vanished. Wan'Dale Robinson got hurt on top of it all. I mean, this is a team that was cruising in the NFC East, looked like they were definitely playoff bound. Now I sat there and I watched them, and maybe this is a slight overreaction, but I only think it's a slight overreaction. I don't know if they win another game. That's how bad they looked.
I don't think it's an overreaction, Howard. We've been fading this Giants team. We've faded them in Seattle. We've in Jacksonville. Didn't work out there, but let's be honest, that game was on the knife's edge pretty much throughout. And now we're finally starting to see, I think, and listen, Brian Dable's done a hell of a job. I take nothing away from Brian Dable as a head coach. He was given a box of magic beans and asked to turn them into a beanstalk. Like, honestly, that's what he was given with this cupboard. And now, unfortunately, Wan'Dale Robinson torn ACL. He's done for the year. And it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse because this Giants team at their core is a misfit quarterback with a really bad cast of characters around him on offense. And in the NFL, you have to be good on offense. You have to be able to push the ball down the field. And you can't just hand it off 35. They handed it off 35 times to Saquon Barkley last week, and they still barely covered the spread. He had 150 yards. It was like probably one of the best games of his career, statistically speaking, counting stats-wise. And they still just squeaked by the Texans. And you saw how bad the Texans were yesterday. So to me, I think the Giants are fade. They were a fade based on the analytics very early on in the year. And I think hopefully the number doesn't catch up on them too fast because there might be some good opportunities to fade them down the stretch. My biggest loser is the other side of town, or I guess technically the same stadium, same side of town, but just a different part of the stadium. Zach Wilson, and throw the Jets in here in general, but Zach Wilson specifically. And why is just not played a bad game. A lot of quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, go to Foxborough and look like crap. After the game, you wear it. You own it. For example, when I make a bad pick, I'll come on the show the next day. I'll say, that pick sucked. That was on me. You can't just say, yeah, no, it was fine. When you're asked if, you put your defense in a bad position because you completed 9 passes for 77 yards and your answer is a word no, you're going to piss off a lot of really good defensive players in that locker room that are asked to give you a chance in a 3-3 game, go drive down the field and make a play and win it in a place that has been a house of horrors for you for 2.5 decades, basically. So Zach Wilson, the Jets, I think they were given a cold dose of reality yesterday, but I hope, Howard, that he learned something from it, right? You make a mistake when you're young, you compound it by saying something stupid to the media after the game. You learn from that, right?
Well, you hope that he learns from that. Absolutely. And you know that Robert Saleh is the type of coach that's going to pull him aside and give him the reprimand on that. Yeah, I mean, it was exactly what you said it was. It was a cold dose of reality. I thought the Jets were kind of overachieving as the year was going on anyway. This is my team. This is your team. This is our team. This is that, so we know what we were expecting coming in. We saw them playing, over their heads a little bit, but we were excited about the week to week growth. The problem is that when you get as beaten as badly as the Jets have in 2 games against the Patriots, and that's just, that's an embarrassing fashion. And at some point you have to turn around and say, this isn't just about, listen, Belichick's in our division, and we're not going to wait until he retires in order to actually beat the Patriots and win this season's series and not be embarrassed. So there's a lot of work ahead for the New York Jets. Again, I was happy with, what we've seen so far, but I mean, this was the smack in the mouth and this was, yeah, like you said, this is Zach Wilson getting his pants taken down and given a red fanny. He got a spanking that he actually really deserved.
Yeah, it certainly was. All right, we will forego our biggest overreactions because I'm sure Howard's going to hear enough about the Cowboys during his show later today with Jim Bowden. And I'll be honest, I don't really love talking about the Raiders anyways because I hear about them enough here in Vegas. So let's move on to the World Cup because that's why we're all here, right? The World Cup is, I think, one of the most fascinating spectacles in all of sports. Obvious timing of this makes it even more unique. So we turn to our expert, very unique in his own right, head of sports content at the Racing Post, Mark Langdon. Mark, I'm sure you're feeling very happy, maybe some extra tea and biscuits this afternoon after a very emphatic England victory. I know what you see, but I woke up this morning and I felt great because I laid it with England last night. I wish I actually laid the goal line. I just laid the money line. Felt like a bit of a soft price at only minus 300 against this Iran team. Early thoughts on England before we get to the rest of the matches today?
Yeah, there was not much excitement coming into the tournament around the England team back here in London. Usually when you get to a World Cup, there are a lot of flags outside and, on cars, in houses, no replica jerseys. All the things that we usually associate with this England football team, just not there for this World Cup. I don't know if it was the relegation from the Nations League or the disappointment of losing that European Championship final, but I think the hype's back. That was as good a performance as I can remember from England in any major tournament. It was fantastic almost from the first minute. Now I know that Iran wouldn't be the strongest team at the World Cup, and there will be more difficult games to go. But in terms of sort of playing in an attacking style of play, that's what the fans wanted to see. And Gareth Southgate, the head coach, managed to do that. Saka on one side, fantastic. You also had on the other side Raheem Sterling, left behind his club form with Chelsea in the EPL, did well. Harry Kane didn't even score, and they've managed to get 6 goals. So really positive start from England for sure.
Mark, let me ask you this, just as because I'm not a soccer guy. I do watch the World Cup as it goes on, and obviously I like to bet it. But so we're sitting there with like a 6-2 game, and that's obviously not your standard soccer score that we're used to. Or is it though? Like betting the early rounds here and betting these early games, is the trend to kind of look towards the overs because you've got enough of these mismatches, or do you kind of hang out still and just expect to see some low scoring, hard fought battles?
I expect to see some low scoring battles. I know we've just come off the back of an 8-goal total, but generally speaking, World Cup opening round matches tend to be low scoring affairs. The average from when they moved to a 32-team competition in 1998 until the last World Cup, the average goals in the first round of group stage matches is only 2.5, despite a lot of mismatches. So tradition and history says, trends are saying that really you want to be looking, I think, to be with the unders more often than not. The one, I suppose, difference, though, this time around is what a European Winter World Cup means. Are the players fresher than when they go into it, usually at the end of a season? This is the middle of the season. And for sure, this England team looked a lot fresher than they would normally do, at a World Cup, because they've only played half the games they usually have. But it's only one game, so I don't want to be drawing too many conclusions. The history of the last sort of 4 or 5 World Cups would suggest that, generally speaking, these are low-scoring games. And until I've seen much sort of bigger evidence, larger scale of evidence to suggest otherwise, then I'll certainly be looking to be more with the unders in the totals.
Man, that's a fantastic point too, Mark, about the timing of it, because it's always about finding those little edges. Yeah. And, in soccer, when there's only 1 or 2 or 3 goals, projected in a match, you find enough of those little edges, and that can get you over the finish line with a bet. And obviously England very fresh today. The under might be a little more prevalent in this next match, top of the hour, Senegal, Netherlands. Senegal, fantastic defensively during their qualifying. I believe they only allowed 2 goals. And Netherlands is a little cagier than the Netherlands of years past when they were more of a wide open bunch. Talk to me about this match. I like the under at 2.5. I got it at -130. What would you recommend heading in here?
Yeah, I think it will. That total on the under would be, I think, the more sensible play. I do expect Netherlands to win, but probably not by a wide margin. Maybe on sort of correct score, 1-0. I am expecting a more traditional World Cup opening kind of game, really, than what we got from that England-Iran match. Senegal have lost their talisman, their main goal-scoring influence in Sadio Mane, injured on the eve of the tournament. Absolutely crucial blow for them, because while they're very strong defensively, and they've got Koulibaly, who plays for Chelsea in the EPL, and also Edouard Mendy, the goalkeeper, they just lack, I think, that creativity when it comes on offense. So I see the Dutch team being able to keep a clean sheet, to shut out Senegal. I had a look at the Dutch team just before we came on, and defensively you've got Matthias de Ligt, who plays for Bayern Munich, Virgil van Dijk, who plays for Liverpool, and Nathan Ake, who plays for Manchester City. That's the back three, and I think that's really strong. And as you were saying, Jared, it's not. I think when people think of the kind of Netherlands, they do see this free-flowing, very exciting, from the Johan Cruyff days of the 1970s, total football, a real relaxed attitude.
Orange crush.
Exactly. This team's got, I would say, probably more streetwise mentality to it. Just in terms of who scores their goals, their star striker Memphis Depay not available to start the game. So Vincent Janssen and Steven Bergwijn will be the front two. There's probably not that many goals, I would say, in those two. A guy that plays just behind them, Hakpo, spelled with a G, so it's Gakpo, but pronounced Hakpo. He has been tearing it up in the Eredivisie this season. 12 assists and 9 goals already. If you do want to play a goal scorer, I'd probably be edging towards him, albeit that the Eredivisie, wouldn't be the strongest league in Europe, that's for sure.
Now, Mark, a minus 176 money line is it's a little on the juicy side for bettors here, but for somebody who is new to the betting space of soccer, I mean, it does seem like a safe bet. Is that the bet you would recommend for somebody coming in on this game here? If somebody wanted to sprinkle a little action somewhere on this game and maybe not want to pay that minus 176 tax, is there something that you like in this game a little bit more than the rest?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of money line, that 176 is about right. I wouldn't want to play that much shorter. I think maybe Netherlands to win to 0 could be one way of doing it. That way you are playing really to the strength of the Dutch team in terms of they don't concede many goals, and also the fact that Senegal missing Sadio Mane, like who will score their goals. Ismaila Sarr is possibly their best option. He plays in the second tier in English football with Watford. He is a very skillful player, but in terms of the kind of drop off from Mane to Ismaila Sarr, it's very big. So I think maybe the 176 doesn't jump out as an absolute must bet in terms of my eyes. And if I were to play on the game, I'd be looking to Netherlands to win to 0, or maybe play Netherlands and the total, and sort of Netherlands and under 2.5. Combining those two would be the ways I'd like to get a little bit more out of that price.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think, especially when you take the chess pieces off the board like Mane and Depay, like that level of talent, goal scoring talent at this level, the defenses are locked in. Like, you need those special players up front to get goals, and when those guys are off the pitch, you see the strategies change. And I think this is a stone cold under match. Well, I say that now, and Netherlands will win 4-0, but I do think this will be a stone cold under, maybe a 1-0 or a 1-1 even, or hopefully 0-0 maybe. You never know. I don't want to sweat it all today, Mark. I didn't sweat the England money line. I don't want to sweat this under at all. All right, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. This is the premier match today for us in the States, USA and Wales. This one feels like a cagey affair too. Of course, Gareth Bale. Doesn't he play in the MLS now? Like, he plays in America, and you've got this American team that hasn't been in the World Cup since I was like a kid, almost like a teenager. What do we expect today from Team USA in their opener against Wales?
Totally agree in terms of a tight game between the two teams. I think the fact that England have just put 6 on Iran, almost certain to qualify, it really makes this game huge pressure on it, because if you lose, your World Cup could almost be over before it's even started. Yeah. That's how important this game is, I think, for both teams. With that, and whenever I see a game like that, I'm always thinking low scoring, because it's just a natural reaction in terms of soccer. When if you ever go back through all of history, particularly like cup finals, they just tend to be low scoring. And I definitely see this one as being a low scoring game. The way I would play it would be to back the US, but tie no bet. So the US, and you get your stake back if it finishes in a tie, because I do think that the ties are a big enough sort of chance in this game. But in terms of talent, when I look at the two teams, you mentioned Gareth Bale there, and he allegedly plays in MLS. He seems to show up whenever he wants, which isn't too often. But when he did pop up, he of course scored in the MLS Cup, and he is somebody that is LA. He's still capable of magic moments, but they are getting fewer and fewer as we go on, and he struggles to play 90 minutes. One of the greatest ever British players, no doubt in my mind, about that. Won the Champions League 5 times, just been a success wherever he goes, and he's dragged Wales, to tournaments before. But if you're betting Wales, you're banking on him doing something that he just hasn't done often enough in the last couple of years. And I just look at the US side, and I think they've got the physicality to match what Wales bring to the table. And then they've got that extra bit of quality, whether it's through Pulisic or particularly in the midfield. I think that's where the game could be won and lost. And I like the energy of that US team. Tyler Adams being one of those that's just been named the captain of the US team. I was at the Leeds United game at Tottenham last week, the last game in the EPL, when you had Adams, who was red carded, but very good before he was red carded. Aronson got a lot of skill to him as well. So I think that as a collective, the US are the stronger team. My biggest doubt would be, I think the head coach of Wales, Rob Page, gets more out of his players as a collective maybe than what the US have managed to do so far. But it is a young group. It is getting stronger. It should be getting stronger. And I definitely agree with the odds in terms of if there's to be a winner, it's more likely to be the US. It's interesting that the prices you've got there on screen, because in Britain it's a bit closer than that. So, I tend to think that there is a global market to soccer, but even so, the odds you're showing there suggest that maybe there is a bit of hometown betting going on.
A little biased here in the States, Mark. We are known to be a little biased here.
That was actually what I was going to ask you. You know, when you bet college football, there's a tax on Notre Dame. When you bet American football, there's a tax on the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I know that there's not a whole lot of line movement when you're betting soccer, but is there a tax on World Cup teams, like on the U.S.? Because, you know, anybody who goes into Las Vegas right now and they walk into a sports book, they're like, oh, hey, the U.S. is playing, I'm going to bet them and do that. And so it kind of affects, you know, the money lines and stuff like that. Do we see that a lot with the U.S. in World Cup, or is there another country that maybe has more money flowing onto their teams that might kind of tilt the scales a little bit?
I would say as a general rule, soccer is a global market, and it tends to be now, because it's such a sophisticated area of betting as well, that there isn't as much hometown bias as maybe there used to be. Like I say, in Britain the betting is slightly closer, so that would suggest that maybe there is more love for the US. In America, which would make a certain amount of sense. And it also used to be very much the case in terms of England and World Cup and European Championships in years gone past. The UK bookmakers would always say that their worst result by a distance was always England. And of course, it's been a great position for the bookmakers to take, because not since 1966 have they won the World Cup, England. So I feel like the markets are becoming more sophisticated. But there is probably just in each territory slight bias towards certain teams.
Fantastic stuff. Mark Langdon, head of sport content over at the Racing Post. Mark, I hope you're well prepared for a very busy next few weeks, because you're not going to sleep much. It's going to be a lot of World Cup. I guess the timing of the matches for you is favorable compared to it being here in the States or somewhere west of you. Having it be earlier in the morning, you get the afternoon matches. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, so our games are 10-1, 4 and 7. So England played around lunchtime today. A lot of the schools, high schools and junior schools, they stayed open, but a lot of the classes just showed the football instead of doing any learning. So they've had a good couple of hours, the school children, and they'll be wishing for more afternoon games.
Absolutely. Mark, we appreciate you, bud. Hopefully we'll have you back on soon to talk a little more World Cup. Mark Langdon, head of sport content at the Racing Post. Of course, our sister site across the pond, does a fantastic job with the content. So I'm 1-0 so far, Howard, betting the World Cup. I'm not going to brag -3, but I will give you, I kind of hinted at it a little bit during that last segment. I'm on the under, Senegal, Netherlands. That match starts top of the hour. And I bet the draw in USA Wales. And I think Mark made a fantastic point about the other matches in your group dictating your strategy. And I think we're going to see that with Senegal, Netherlands, because we saw Ecuador win yesterday. in convincing fashion. So if you get a bad result for either Senegal or Netherlands, if they give up 2 or 3 goals, you're pretty much done, because Ecuador looks to be in good shape, and those good on good teams, I see more cagey matches where when you see, Ecuador against Qatar, or in this case, England against Iran, that's when you've got to run up the score to get your goal differential up. So I feel like both matches this afternoon will be a little cagier. Do you have are you a big soccer bettor? Will you be partaking in the World Cup at all, or just more of a fan at this point for Team USA?
I mean, I'm really just more of a fan. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the last World Cup, I was working in another place, and somebody bought me a Netherlands jersey, which,
That's cool.
Soccer jerseys for
Cool
guys
colors.
my size don't look good at all. So I looked like somebody blew up a parking cone, is really kind of what it looked like. And so,
it's form-fitting.
Always,
these guys are in fantastic shape. They really are.
Amazing shape. So
they
for
really
me,
are fantastic shape.
I watch it just for the sake of enjoying it, and I will cheer on the Netherlands along with the United States just because, hey, why not? I've got one country in Europe, I've got one in the I've got the US, the hometown team to root for. So at least let me just sit and enjoy it. What's that?
Amsterdam's going to be rocking. I don't know if you've ever been. I haven't, but I've heard fantastic things. I need to make it over there to Amsterdam. I need to make it over to Amsterdam at some point in my career. All right, let's bring over our guru in the American football department. His name is Bobby Stanley, and he's going to talk to us about Monday Night Football tonight. Bobby, before we get started, I don't think we've ever had this discussion. I feel like we've talked about lots of sports in our time doing shows together. Will you be getting involved in the World Cup at all over the next few weeks?
I may dabble. I mean, if I do bet, obviously I'll throw a couple bucks on the U.S. There's a couple people I follow online that I trust. Maybe I'll throw $20 on a couple long shots. I'm not going to go crazy, but I'll watch. You are up there.
I gave everyone a rocking chair winner this morning on England. I know people were like, "Oh, I can't believe he does a gambling show and he gave out a minus 325 bet." I don't care what the odds are. If it should have been minus 500, it's a bet for me.
Exactly. No, but I'll watch. I'll definitely watch. I'll have a couple bucks here and there. I always pull for the underdog in situations like this where I don't follow it too closely. I want to see history be made. Obviously, I want to see the U.S. at least make it to the out of the group stage. That'll be a big thing for me. But it's more sports. It's more things to bet on. It's never a bad thing.
Yeah, so just one more time, my official plays later this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're hanging out, under Senegal, Netherlands, and a little unit sprinkle on the draw. The USA-Wales draw at plus 210. All right, Bobby, let's get into Monday Night Football. And we discussed this last night because I'm giving out some props on another show later, and I'm not a prop guy, but you are. And you think George Kittle is the man with a plan tonight against this Cardinals defense. Please, sir, tell me why.
I do, and it's a tough game to handicap from a player prop perspective. Yeah. Obviously, with the Kyler Murray news being very, very late, I think it's pretty much confirmed that McCoy is starting. We didn't have half the slate, so you're really just kind of picking from the 49ers. But I do feel great about Kittle regardless of Kyler Murray's status. It's a good bounce-back spot for him. He's had 2 quiet weeks, and the Cardinals are one of the worst teams in the NFL against tight ends. I think they're 31st in DVOA. They're allowing 8 targets, 73 receiving yards per game to tight ends. And this line, he's hit 6 straight games against the Cards. Obviously, being a divisional opponent, you get a lot of frequency there. I look at the past performances this season, and who are the tight ends that have hit this line against the Cardinals? Kelsey, Waller, Goddard, Juwan Johnson, Noah Fant twice, and Tyler Higbee twice. So 8 of 10 games, tight ends hit this 4-reception line. Kittle's just as good, if not better, than some of those guys. So it is a little juicy. It's a minus 135 was the best line I could find. But I do like Kittle to get 4 receptions.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot, and I'm definitely in on that. Bobby, I'm having a hard time. It's good to meet you finally in person here. I'm having a hard time with that Devil's cap. That Devil's cap is really, it's just.
Are you a Rangers fan?
You're making a good first impression on Mr. Bender.
Right,
well, So, Howard, if you can't tell behind me, my other team is the LA Rams. I have nothing else to hang my hat on but the Devils lately. So I'm showing my New Jersey
Super Bowl, Bobby. Jeez.
That's yesterday. What have you done for me lately?
It was amazing. I wish I won a Super Bowl with my team in the last,
I was hanging out. I was hanging out with a bunch of Jets fans yesterday, right? I'm watching the Jets game with a bunch of Jets fans yesterday, and they're ripping me to shreds. You sold your soul for one ring. You guys are trash. I said, I'm getting this from Jets fans right now. Are you kidding me? So
I would sell my soul for a ring.
Talk trash on any fan base ever, and if they do, you can have them come talk to me, and I'll show them the film of Keith Byers fumbling on the goal line in the '98 AFC Championship game, and that'll sober them up real quick. Sorry, Howard. Continue with
listen. I'll pivot off of that because the Jets are trash.
Yeah, let's pivot off of that.
They won the Super Bowl the year before I was born, so that hurts me to no end. So let's get back to tonight's game here, Bobby, because listen, I love your George Kittle call here. Let me ask you, when you're looking at this game, and obviously the props being the Kyler Murray situation not good, how do you change your strategy at all? Knowing that the game's in Mexico City, the game's going to have the altitude, not to mention the fact that if we looked at the recent weather reports right now, we're looking at thunderstorms. We're looking at mid-60s temperatures. We're looking at about 8 to 10 mile an hour winds, but it's the altitude that really tends to get to a lot of people. Maybe some kicker props?
I did not have any kicker props. I did, but you raise a very valid point with the altitude. The Kyler Murray piece, though, is interesting. Because you have to the spread, I think last night, Jared, when we talked, it was at 8. Now it's up to 10. You really have to be curious about blowouts. What does that mean for rush totals? What does that mean for over-unders and things like that? So you definitely take the Kyler Murray piece into consideration. If he played tonight, would this have gone over? Probably more likely than it does with Colt McCoy. Would that have mean a little less running the ball of Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey at some point? Yeah, probably. It'll take away from some of those pass attempts. But that's kind of how you look at it, really. The altitude definitely is something to consider, though. Go look back at any Denver Broncos games of these two guys and see who fared well and who couldn't hold up, if you want at least a benchmark.
Right. Yeah, and that is this is a tricky game. Like anytime and I always feel this way about the London games. Like you just don't know who's going to have it. Some guys don't like to travel. They're in a weird place. They've never been before. Their routine's thrown off. And then you throw in the altitude and the conditions. It could absolutely play off tonight. And I think we accurately predicted. I think when we were exchanging our DMs last night, I said if Kyler doesn't play, this jumps to 10. And that's pretty much. So I feel good about where I'm at market-wise here. And I think our pal Clev TA gave out Niners -8 yesterday. So hopefully you got ahead of that news. And you do have a -8 in your pocket. I did not lay it. I have nothing in this game besides the Kittle bet. But you do have one more prop that you'd like to share with Deebo Samuel.
I do. And it was very interesting when I started going a little bit further into detail on kind of this Arizona Cardinals defense. So Deebo over 50.5 receiving yards. If you shop this around, I seen it as high as 54.5. So I felt really good about getting 50. But then again, why? Why Deebo? They rank number 1 in DVOA against wide receiver ones. Okay, well, that's interesting. But Deebo's not your traditional wide receiver one. He's not taking the top off like a DeAndre Hopkins or a CeeDee Lamb or anything like that. They're 29th in DVOA against short passes. 84% of Samuel's receptions are at the line of scrimmage or considered short yardage situations. So his receptions line heavily juiced over 4.5. Let's say he gets to 5. He's getting 9.1 yards after the catch per reception. I do like the over 50.5. It does play in if it gets a little bit more crazy with the weather. They're not going to be pushing the ball down the field. You have that play with the altitude as well. I like the 50.5 as a number, and I like him to get involved more in the short yardage situations. He's had great. He averaged 60 yards per game last year against the Cardinals as well. So if you can get the 50.5, I feel comfortable about it. But in general, scary game. We were talking about it last night. If you didn't put a gun to my head, maybe I wouldn't bet it as much. But I do like the 50.5 on Deebo.
Love that.
Excuse me. Bobby, I was looking at Christian McCaffrey. I love the fact that you cite DVOA. It's one of my favorite stats to really kind of break down. Arizona ranks 31st in DVOA against running back pass plays. Christian McCaffrey over 35 and a half receiving yards. That's listen, it's minus 130. My problem with that, and I'm curious as to your take, my problem with that is because we're looking at such a vast spread, because we're looking at San Francisco being up as much as they are, do you worry about the lack of a need to pass to the running back? Sure, there'll be some design screens there, 35.5 doesn't seem like a tall number to kind of account for. But how do you handicap something like that, given what the spread is in this game?
Normally, I'd say you're right, but if you look at the circumstances of this San Francisco offense, you get Christian McCaffrey 3 weeks ago. You get Elijah Mitchell back last week. If they win this game, they're the third seed in the NFC. You need to configure this offense and start thinking ahead. What better opportunity to see, can we go two backs with Elijah Mitchell in the backfield? Can we put Christian McCaffrey in the slot? Let's start tinkering with our pieces. They're still so new to us. I do like the 35.5 if you can get it, because I think Kyle Shanahan is still playing around with his new toys, especially with Mitchell coming back. Mitchell outrushed McCaffrey. It was like 18-13 rushes. So we did see an early indication maybe his more spread out and Mitchell will be more that back. I just curious to see how it shakes out for this Niners offense going the rest of the way.
Bobby, who wins tonight? You got a final score prediction?
A final score prediction. Oh, it's an ugly one.
Obviously, the Niners are probably going to win based off of the spread you see below on your screen. But
I think
do they cover the 10 now that it's kind of ballooned out to this, extended price?
All right, here's a mind-blowing one for you. 20-14 Niners, lean the under, take Arizona plus 10, which is actually 9.5 on a couple other books. 20-14 Niners.
Howard, any parting shots for Mr. Stanley, fantasy alarm guru over here?
No. I think I like the way he's kind of blanketed it. And you led off with George Kittle. I wanted to ask you about George Kittle because my play of the day may or may not involve that San Francisco tight end as well. No, man, I think that 20-14 though. I mean, I was kind of hoping you were going to say something more like a 20. Right, I was kind of more looking for like a 24-10, so at least that the Niners do cover for me, and then it does stay on the under. But I'm with you on it being a little closer.
Don't worry, man. I thought the Texans were going to make it a game yesterday. Don't listen to anything I say.
He's the prop Holliday, not the sides Holliday. Yeah. That's why we bring him on the show. He does a fantastic job at what he does. But I like to ask him what his opinion is on the game. It is actually funny, and we can close with this because I know we're running long here. But the prop markets and how you handicap props, Howard, I'll start with you. It plays into handicapping the games because game script matters, right?
Yeah. Game script definitely matters. And when I sit there and I look at props, I tend to look for something that looks egregiously low. That's kind of where I live, because when you are handicapping the game, it's all well and good, but to get down to as granular a level as you need to in order to hit the props, I tend to just, find me something that's like super low. Give me like a slot receiver with a 13.5 over under on his receiving yards. And that's where I'll live. And that's kind of where I'm going to end up living with tonight's game too.
Yeah. No. Bobby, we just got a question in the chat about injuries for the Cardinals. I'm mentioning DJ Humphries, their left tackle. And again, very hard to handicap the Cardinals side of things tonight. But with McCoy in, Humphries out, is there anyone on Arizona that catches your eye at all?
Well, I was looking at this before. Rondale Moore had a really good game. I went back and looked at Colt McCoy's game against the Rams. It was a full start. He goes 26 of 37, 70% per completions. You love that. 238 and 1 touchdown. If that's your backup, that's all you're asking for. Who are the biggest recipients of that? Connor had 21 carries. Hopkins had 14 targets. He's questionable tonight. Rondale Moore had 13 targets. He's expected to go. Hollywood Brown may come back. Someone who catches my eye, I would say, is a Rondale Moore. Connor, if they can get in the red zone, I think it's going to be difficult for him to score. But I think he's at near even money to get a touchdown, minus 105. But it just scares me. So from the Arizona side of things, Connor and Rondale Moore are the two guys that stand out the most from an action standpoint. Who will get the most attempts? Who will get the most targets? Those two stand out to me.
Great stuff. Prop Holiday, Bobby Stanley. Follow him on Twitter at, Prop Holiday? I don't host the show very often, so I don't do this too much.
Give your Holiday
for the people.
It is with 2 L's. No, guys, thank you very much. Howard, we got to do more stuff together, man. Pleasure to finally
work. You should collab. Bobby, you should hop on Howard's show. I feel like you guys would do well together. You guys have similar lines of thinking. I like the
I think we're
collaboration.
going to end up doing.
between you two.
I think we're going to end up doing a little prop segment with Prop Holiday this coming week here as we get near those Thanksgiving games.
Guys,
see, this is what I do. I bring people together.
You do.
I am the glue that holds together the show with, raggedy things flying off of it and all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Lauren mispronouncing people's names, me mispronouncing people's names. Bobby comes on the show and does his thing. Great stuff. All right, Bobby, rest up. Enjoy. Best of luck to the fam and best of luck to your props tonight. Enjoy your first Thanksgiving with your baby, too. That's going to be sweet. That's
I'm super
really sweet.
I'm very, very soon. It's going to be a good time making a big old tray of mac and cheese this year. So,
guys, I love that. Now I'm hungry.
Best of luck. Enjoy the rest of the way.
Great stuff. Bobby Stanley, of course, our prop expert here on Pickswise, does a fantastic job. You'll likely hear from him again on Thursday if he's not too busy feeding his adorable newborn mac and cheese. Before we get into plays of the day, let's bet it, presented by Superbook Sports. And can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Vegas. No computer algorithms, no one across the pond setting lines for American sports, just the best team of traders in the business at the Superbook in Las Vegas, plus some of the best odds boosts and promo bets in the country: Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, Tennessee. Download the Superbook Sports app, visit superbook.com, start your battle against Vegas. I can confirm that my big money line bet on England this morning was on the Superbook app. Thank you for the very favorable, soft price on the English team across the pond, getting it done for me. We'll see how things go for the rest of the World Cup. But until then, Howard Bender, play of the day, my friend.
Ooh, well, just to piggyback everything that Prop Holiday just gave us, I've got George Kittle anytime touchdown at plus 170. As we just learned, Arizona ranks 31st in DVOA against the tight end. If you guys like playing those DFS showdown slates, I've got the full write-up over at fantasyalarm.com right now. One of my captain MVP suggestions is George Kittle for that factor as well. If you like fantasy, then guess what? The Arizona Cardinals give up the most fantasy points per game to the tight end position. So while everybody's looking for Debo and everybody's looking for Ayuk, George Kittle going to slide in there anytime touchdown, plus 170. Have some fun with it.
Love it. I think George Kittle, if I was going to pick one guy tonight, the pick to click with you and with Bobby Stanley, both aligning behind Mr. Kittle. Hard for me to ignore that. By the way, I did fail to mention a couple of 3-star plays on the site today before I get to my play of the day. Philip Tomich chiming in, Celtics Bulls spread tonight. And Matt Marquardt, Texas Tech Creighton, sneaky good. This is a fantastic week for college basketball. We'll get into a lot more college hoops as the week wears on, but Matt Marquardt is chiming in with a Texas Tech Creighton total tonight afternoon. I don't know which tournament it is, but it is some tournament. Most of the games this week are being played on a neutral court, so be sure to factor that into your handicap. All right, speaking of neutral courts, I am taking it late night, and I apologize for my pals on the East Coast. This is late even for me on the West Coast. This is a 10 o'clock Pacific time game, 1 a.m. Eastern. Technically, it'll qualify, Howard, for tomorrow's play of the day as well. I'm spanning 2 days. Spanning 2 days is my play of the day. All right, we're going UNLV on the money line today. They're taking on Southern Illinois. So ill. Hopefully I'm not so ill after this bet tonight. This is the SoCal Challenge. It's being played in San Juan Capistrano, California, just south of Anaheim. And, of course, if you're familiar with the topography here in the great United States of America, UNLV, not too far away from California. Southern Illinois, pretty far away. So the travel disparity here, I think, was pretty big. And this Salukis team has kind of been road weary anyways. So they started out hot, 2-0 against the spread, 2-0 straight up. Impressive win over Oklahoma State. Also won by 31 at home against Little Rock. But since major letdown, and it's kind of on the road to Stillwater, you beat Oklahoma State, all is good, right? Yeah, then you come back home and you lose to Southern Indiana outright as a 10-point favorite by 18. So they failed to meet odds makers expect by 28.5 points the game after beating Oklahoma State. They beat Tennessee State, didn't cover their last time out. So after starting 2-0 straight up with an upset win against a Power 5 team, they go 0-2 against the spread, barely beat Tennessee State and get their doors blown off by Southern Indiana. UNLV's been kind of all over the map. They're 4-0 straight up, but just 1-3 against the spread. That one win, though, was at home against Dayton as an outright underdog, and they won that game obviously straight up as well, being undefeated so far this season. I think it's a good litmus test for both teams. Mountain West, Missouri Valley Conference, two very good college basketball conferences. I would put the Mountain West ahead of the Missouri Valley right now. Ken Pom also thinks so. And this is a Rebels team that likes to speed you up. Top 40 in adjusted tempo, third in forced turnover percentage. The Salukis struggle a little bit in that category. Double-digit turnovers in 3 of their 4 games, and the only game that they did not turn it over at least 15 times was in that win against Oklahoma State. So we'll see if the Salukis are a little sloppy tonight, but again, a little bit of travel involved for them. NLV is a play-on team early in the season, despite the fact that they're just 1-3 against the spread. They don't really need to do much to cover tonight because I'm betting them on the money line. They're taking on Southern Illinois, and I apologize for making all of you stay up late to watch this game, but I think the Rebs a good bet tonight in the SoCal Challenge. Howard, been a pleasure, bud. Any parting shots before we say farewell and I go watch this Senegal-Netherlands match?
No, I'm actually going to go watch that Senegal-Netherlands match as well, and I appreciate you pointing out tonight's action for me. The last time I watched a UNLV college basketball game, I think Jerry Tarkanian was the coach, and he was chewing on a towel.
Biting a towel on the sidelines. My boy Larry Johnson, grandmama, he used to do the little dance. I don't even know what the dance was, but he used to do the dance.
Wasn't Stacey Augmon on that team too?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't he did he go
UNLV
on to
so good.
Didn't he go on to star in Eddie with Whoopi Goldberg and launch his acting career? Come on, that's what
We got an Eddie reference on the show. I think that means it's time to say farewell. Howard, go eat some real food before Senegal and Netherlands play to a 0-0 draw. Stop eating whatever that furry thing is on your desk. This has been Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy your Monday. Good luck with your bets tonight.